Hello, Abigail here with the astrology and tarot reading for the new moon in Gemini. This new moon is at 24 degrees of Gemini and falls on June 14th at 9:53 p.m. CET. This is an interesting one because it doesn't really have a whole lot of interaction with the other planets. It is just the sun and the moon hanging out and then a sextile to Chiron. Something that is interesting is that the ruler is over in Cancer, and so there is a watery, emotional, emotive quality to this moon. Also important to note, it is right outside of the retrograde degrees, right outside of the Mercury retrograde degrees, which in the next few days after this moment, it will then hit 16 degrees of Cancer. It's at 14 degrees during this lunation. 16 degrees of Cancer, once it hits 26 degrees, it will then retrograde back to that 16 degrees and then go forward. And so there is an element of like a moment right before a lot of stuff has to be reprocessed. There's a lot of new information in this new moon that I think is going to get caught up in the kind of restructuring of the Mercury retrograde, especially as a Mercury ruled new moon. And so there is an element of kind of like newness and emotional depth. I also think this new moon is an opportunity for new experiences, for new connections, for um, connecting in like fun and interesting ways with other people, if that makes any sense. There's just, I don't know that these relationships are, it's kind of here nor there what kind they are, but there's an ability here to connect in new ways and in unexpected ways and to communicate in new ways that we have never done before. I love a water Mercury for artistic endeavors. So this new moon can be a new artistic endeavor. It can be a new hobby. It can be a new activity that welcomes in a bunch of connection. I would encourage either taking a class on this new moon or signing up for one. Just something that gets you into a space of kind of opening up your mind, of giving you something to chew on mentally. This could be just listening to a bunch of new podcasts, but there is kind of a shakeup in needed in your kind of mental world, whether it is, a different type of subject you need to study or a different kind of energy you need to welcome in. It's just this vibe of like something needs to shift a little bit. Also, the only kind of like major aspect we have going on here is, pardon me, is a sextile to Chiron at 29 degrees. Chiron is about to move into Taurus. And so uh, there is also this element of not new you, but you, and this is very Cancer Mercury energy, but you kind of taking a look back and seeing how much you've grown, in seeing the ways in which you have transformed and the ways you have um, shifted over time. Also, kind of looking back on the versions that you have been and the ways that you do and don't agree with those versions anymore. I think it's important to kind of hold on to our respect and veneration for those versions, knowing that they did what they could when they could and that they are survivors as well. But it is recognizing how we have changed and how we would like to move forward. And I think this new moon is a great opportunity to throw off old patterns, to throw off old triggers and traumas. Not that we can ever escape it, not that it's ever going away, but that we no longer need to like live there. We no longer have to be like bound to this idea. Also with Chiron and Aries, it's also this energy of like there are still some people in your life who see you as an old version of yourself and who are refusing to move with the energy of who you are now. And so you might be seeing some conflict coming up with these folks where like you'll say something or do something, they're like, oh, ha ha ha, you always do it this way. And it's like, that was 5 to 10 years ago. Like, I'm not the same person. I have different hopes. I have different dreams. I also think that this Gemini new moon might bring people from the past who have been past triggers to kind of highlight how you have changed and grown and how your boundaries have shifted and how you are able to be a warrior and a fighter for yourself and for others with this Chiron energy. And so it is actually a really, I think, beautiful and powerful new moon, not in a way of like, oh, there's massive progress or change, although that can happen if you have something in your own personal chart, but just in general, it's like, oh, that's interesting. Or I would never have expected that. Or, oh my gosh, I haven't talked to them in so long. it's giving that. It's also like the energy of like randomly just meeting a stranger who you really vibe with and who you'll probably never see again. And maybe with Jupiter and Cancer, you do end up seeing them again, but it's under unusual circumstances and it's not in a way that you would expect. Gemini is definitely coming in here with like the ability to be multifaceted and have different perspectives and things like that. It also feels like it could be a good moment with someone you don't agree with. And I'm not talking about really major stuff, but like someone who you don't often see eye to eye with, like coming together and finding a way to like agree in a productive way and to have a discussion where like there's actual flexibility and change rather than just constantly butting heads all the time. So it is a beautiful time of fluidity. I will also say if you've been real tired, real worn out, this is the new moon to allow yourself to rest. This is the new moon to not push yourself to do anything, to go with the flow, to like if you are going to do any type of spell work, let it be very unplanned, let it be very free flow, see what the universe and the energy brings in. Also with Gemini, there is an element of maybe you doing spell work for someone else or participating in someone else's story. Um, as a way to get perspective on where we're headed. I also think something that's important to note is that this new moon is on Orange Boy's birthday. And so, as a side note, I think something interesting might come to light there. With Chiron at 29 degrees, something either about their personal trauma or more likely the ways in which they have traumatized and bullied people. And I could very well see people starting to stand up en masse in a very Chironic way. Because Chiron has been in a sextile to this degree for a minute with the retrogrades and back and forth and how slowly Chiron moves. So that's just a fun little side note. I could definitely see more people coming forward and standing up to him. I could also see an extra push to release the files. Um, I can also see a lot of advocacy with this new moon around violence and assault and the ways in which people are traumatized, especially when it comes to being traumatized at the whims of someone, where someone simply wants to cause harm, and people being like, this is screwed up. Why are we doing this? And definitely I don't know if there will be success in this moment, but a start or a beginning of a movement that pushes back at this in a real way, or a renewal of a past movement that has been working on this. Um, so yeah, little orange boy is going to be getting some pushback. Now he also might get some perceived victories, but we have to remember that we can't see everything that's going on, and that our news is very restricted. So don't believe everything you see on this day. Uranus and Gemini, and according in my book, is propaganda, and with also being Grandpa's Uranus return coming up in the next 7 years. I think his might be in 5 years. Um, yeah, I think we also might see a new push to try to paint him in a certain light. A switcheroo. I could also see them trying to launch a specific predecessor around this time, someone who's supposed to fill the void. They have been trying to soft launch a bunch of people. I could see them trying to put up another archetype to try to, prepare themselves for the moment when someone who's 80 something eventually has to kick it. So yeah, just look out to see what happens this day because it could be quite interesting. I also think the celebrations around this loser's birthday might be very telling about public opinion because Gemini is about everyone's thoughts and opinions on various things. Anyways, moving on. I just thought that was a fascinating little addition here. But this is a moment to welcome the unexpected, to let things happen in a way that we don't expect, to participate in the energy and removing some measure of control while not giving up parts of ourselves, which is the sextile with Chiron. Like you don't have to control everything, and you can also still have firm boundaries, and you can still let things kind of like pan out in whatever way the universe brings, and also still have expectations and have some of those met. So it is a time to be open to experiencing anything, to seeing what the universe brings in, to welcoming a new perspective, a new idea, a new process into your life. It's one of those moons that I think is going to be a bit understated, but in the long term, and like not talked about as much because of all the other astrology going on around it, but I think in the long term there's actually a lot in here that we can learn from. And um, just engaging with this energy is going to help a lot of us get unstuck. Now, will we very shortly then experience, I think it's like 2 to 3 weeks, experience the Mercury retrograde, which will force us to reconsider and to think through some of this? Absolutely. But this is that little ignition. I'm like visually getting the Ace of Swords in the tarot, which would be interesting to see if we end up pulling that when I do the tarot for this. But there's just an element of shift and change. I also think that this moment, which I kind of mentioned before, but I more broadly, might be a turning point that we are not aware of in the world, in our own personal lives, in a specific relationship. It'll be one of those moons that you look back on and you're like, oh, this thing happened around that time. And you look it up, and the most major event is going to be this moon. You're like, oh, that moon was doing a lot. And I wasn't aware of it, which is often how Geminis handle things. Anyways, that is the astrological portion of this. I am going to shuffle and draw some cards for this moment to get more insight. I really love bringing the tarot in for these because, you know, you can take some of the astrology at face value and lose a bit of the nuance, and the cards often bring that in. Sometimes I get really positive cards for very difficult lunar moments, or I get really tough cards for, you know, really optimistic moments. And oftentimes I get feedback from people being like, oh, that was really affirming, you know, or that, you know, was more like on point to me than the astrology because it didn't really pan out the way I thought it would. Okay, to be expected. Okay, just throwing its weight around. Oh, 2 4s in a row and a 3. Okay, let's see. I also love this deck. It's huge, but I adore it. Yeah. Interesting on the bottom of the deck. Anyways, we'll start off with these cards. So we have the Three of Cups. It is about connection. That's what I said. It's about connection. It's about care. It's about um, spending time with people we love. I also love that this is kind of culty. It's also like being with the homies and the people that we care about who all have like a very similar vibe and like doing little rituals, which I love that for us. Then we have the Four of Pentacles and the Four of Swords. I do think there is going to be an element because of the upcoming, you know, Mercury Cancer retrograde of feeling a bit stuck in this moment, of feeling a bit limited when it comes to resources, feeling like there's not enough. But the participation in this moon is going to show us where there is more. It's just going to take some time because of the fact that Mercury is heading into a retrograde. I think we're more likely to see the results of this moment once Mars enters into Gemini, which will happen in Cancer season. It feels like, especially when Mars hits those light degrees, which will be a little later in the summer, there's going to be some kind of revelation and some kind of like trigger point. And it's very interesting. I always suggest to look at significant moons and then look at the other astrological events that are happening on those degrees or the planets in your chart, and it often paints a much broader picture. The reason I say I think it's really important is because we do have the King of Pentacles here. Now, interesting to note, we haven't gotten any major arcana yet. So all of this is kind of information for now. With the King of Pentacles, I do think our ability to release, which I think this is also very much about, like the Four of Swords is like chill, like relax, things are happening, things are coming. You do actually have enough. It just doesn't feel that way. And with this King of Pentacles, there is an element of, in the near future, there being an ability to take action, an ability to move your resources around, to shift and to change things in a very material way, but it is all hinging on this ability to let go of control and to lean into other perspectives, other energies, other connections. Not feeling the urge to pull it out, but there's the Hermit on the bottom of the deck, and so it does feel like this moon might feel a little slow, partially because of the water rulership with Mercury. It's not going to feel as quick as a Gemini new moon, and also the other astrology around it being pretty crazy. Yeah. Interesting. All of these minor arcana. Whoa! And this, pat myself on the back. This affirms what I said about this being a moment where you don't think a lot's going on. It feels real slow. It feels like things are not moving. And then we get what? 10 of Pentacles, 10 of Cups, and the 6 of Swords. You are actually moving towards a lot. of stuff, I think a lot faster than you think. I think a lot of your hopes and dreams are a lot closer, and by a lot closer, you know, depending on how big they are, the next few years. Depending on how small they are, quite soon. And if it's something big that you've been working on for a while, very Four of Pentacles, very King of Pentacles, quicker than you think. So in this moon, I think there is an element where it's not going to necessarily make sense how big this energy is. Now, we don't have any major arcana yet. So it is very much giving, like, these are very much day-to-day things, things that affect our day-to-day, things that we are working towards, stuff very specifically in the mundane, which these cards are very like dreams come true, hopes, physical and material success kind of coming together. I think if you have a goal for future stability, this new moon is actually a big step in the right direction. So following and listening to your intuition is smart. Now, like I said with the Four of Swords, you don't need to take tons of action. You just kind of need to like get in the boat and let the current take you, but make sure that you get in the boat for sure. We do on the bottom of the deck, once again, because it's been flashing me, we got the Nine of Wands. And so there is, with the Hermit and Nine of Wands, it in the moment is going to feel sticky. It is going to feel like, we're still doing the same old things. Nothing is changing and moving. And yet I currently have the AC off, so that sound is a little better in here. And I literally had, and so it's a bit sticky. And I had this momentary feeling, when it like it's a really sticky day and it's in the evening and you're like, when does it cool down? And I just got this feeling for a moment of like a breath of fresh air, when like something has loosened up in the atmosphere and this breath of fresh air comes on a very sticky evening. And that is what this moment is like, where you're like, when is it going to change? When is the sun going down actually going to make things cooler? And this little breeze comes in that picks up and makes a beautiful, cool summer evening. And so that's really the vibe here. Yeah, this is very specifically with the King of Pentacles and the Four of Pentacles for people who have been really, really manifesting and desiring something. If you haven't been, it's not that you're not getting this energy, it's just not going to be as intense. I don't know, we're going to get major arcana, which is fine. We have King of Wands and the Five of Wands. Not everyone is going to agree with the choices that you make around this time, and that's fine. It's not their life. They don't have to participate in it. But what is important and what keeps coming through is that you just need to be participating. Also, with the Five of Wands, it's always interesting. It's a good idea to ask yourself why you're getting pushback. And with the King of Wands, viewing it from more of like an interesting little game rather than like, am I doing the wrong thing? Should I be judging myself in this moment? No, you shouldn't be judging yourself in this moment. You shouldn't be questioning everything you do, but it's not bad to ask why folks are being the way they are, why the energies around you are so conflicting. This is also very much a moment, especially with Chiron, about trusting yourself, knowing that you've been through so much. Trusting yourself, which is a very King of Wands thing. The King of Wands feels very Chiron energy. Yeah, I knew we were going to get one major arcana, so I knew two now. I knew we had to keep pulling. I just felt the need. We've got three major arcana, but the other one here is this Ten of Wands. Now, in this image, I think in the interpretation of this deck, it's actually pretty powerful. You are gathering your tools. It's not necessarily, being completely destroyed, but the reason things are delayed is because you are gathering things together. The reason things have been delayed is because you are accumulating enough energy in order to activate your desires. It's also interesting that we have 3 of the 10s. The other 10 would be the 10 of Swords. And so we are coming to multiple points of culmination of the efforts of your labors. They are coming to fruition. Now, I do think there is a bit of time here. I don't think, the day of the new moon just going to drop and everything is going to be perfect and magical and lovely. No. But I do think you're going to get little tingles, especially when it comes to your connections with others, with that 3 of Cups we started off with, of how things are going to shift and change, of the good things that are coming in. The 5 of Wands feel like distractions. Don't let yourself get distracted. But the major arcana. So first we have Strength, which I find this interpretation really interesting. Literally going down in flames, wrestling with this, what is that, a leopard? And there is some tenacity required. The 2026 is requiring us to have a certain level of fortitude and a high threshold for conflict and shifts and movements. However, with judgment, which is a 20, we have the tens, with judgment, we are coming to the end of something, which is bringing us to the beginning of something. So it's almost like the beginning of the rest of your life, is what I'm hearing. There is a palpable shift in this new moon that isn't obvious to the energy that is giving. Like looking at the astrology, it's like, okay, sure. But because it is so free and is kind of like a separate little agent, it is able to actually do quite a lot, especially when it comes to kind of untangling things that have been a bit tangled. And every time we get one of these big major moons that's really interconnected with the astrology, it feels like we're just adding more to the tangle. This is a moment of problem solving. This is a moment of shifting. This is a moment of getting in that boat and allowing it, because we have the Four of Swords, allowing it to take us where we're headed, because we've already put in all of the planning, all of the work, all of the time, all of the effort into our manifestations and desires. And now we are waiting to see that come to fruition. Now, because this has become very predictive, I do want to pull one more card. Temperance thing like Abigail, always wanting more. One more card to see if we have any kind of timing around when we get to see this, because we know in the moment it may not be super obvious. Super obvious. These little hoes. We're not going to know the timing. I got the Star, the Queen of Cups, and the Four of Cups. It's giving very much eye has not seen, ear has not heard when the coming of the Lord will be, if you want to quote some scripture. However, on the bottom of the deck, we do have the Lovers. And I have been getting a lot since the beginning of the year. There's been a lot of energy about how the Lovers and the Chariot, representing the months of June and July, are going to be very important and going to see a lot of change. So I do think, especially once we get to the new moon in Cancer, which is a month from now, a lot of stuff is going to be coming in. It's just going to be coming in when we do not expect it. This new moon will come and go, and you'll be like, well, Abigail said all this stuff, blah, blah, blah. And then, yeah, hearing like even just 4 weeks, because the 4 weeks from between the new moons, 4 weeks from now, something is going to come in that is going to give you this feeling, regardless of where you are in your life. It doesn't necessarily have to be romance, but this feeling of connection, this feeling of care, this feeling of being supported. We started out with the Three of Cups, which is, two threes make six. It is also about connection, but more than just two. There's an element of things all starting to come together in the fall. And while eclipses can tear things apart, for those of us who have experienced our lives already being torn apart and now we're trying to put them back together, I truly think the fixed signs eclipses are going to pull all these things up together and make a more cohesive whole, especially since we have the Strength card, which is August, and also Leo. I think a lot is going to shift and change in the next 3 months. And so this new moon is kind of that beginning moment. I think a lot of people thought it was going to be the Venus Jupiter conjunction, which I do think it is, but that was also a lot of like, what are the energies you're dealing in and how has this transit affected you? But I think this new moon is a breath of fresh air. And so, like I said, I don't know that it's going to be that obvious in the moment, but down the road, it's going to be one of those events where you're like, oh, yeah, that's crazy. Like, I didn't expect that, but that makes total sense. And now I'm kind of understanding uh, everything that happened, and the delays that I was experiencing and the stuff that didn't happen in the time that I thought it should happen, because other stuff needed to be in place for it to be a more permanent, longer lasting situation. Same with the Strength card representing fortitude. So look forward to this as the beginning of the rest of your life, as the beginning of something new, as especially if you've been putting a lot of work and energy behind something. This is a major shift in that journey. And while it will take time to unfold, Minor Arcana is giving very much like a series of events rather than all at once. Although we do have the Judgment card, so I could see there being, for some of you, a reckoning of some kind. Not in a bad way necessarily, but in a sense of like, oh, now we're having to take stock of everything. But I'm getting a really strong intuition that this is a big change that is not going to match the kind of astrological implications. And I think that's kind of fun and also very Gemini, to be like, haha, you thought I wasn't going to do a bunch of shit. Now I am. anyways, I am excited for this moment. It does feel like it is a shift in the tides. Also, we are getting to the halfway point of the year, especially as not this week, but next week, we will enter into Cancer season and meet the summer solstice. So hang in there, folks. Things are shifting, things are changing, especially if you've been putting in the work. I wish you many blessings. Have a blessed new moon in Gemini, and I'll see you all later.